Well, welcome today. My name is Rob Harris. I work in the counseling department, and today we're going to talk about planning an effective strategy for transferring. And one of the key questions that a lot of students really want to know, and really when it comes down to it, your parents want to know this too, if you're kind of coming right out of high school, is will your credits transfer? And the big resounding question to that is yes, but really it's more about how will they transfer. And so a lot of times people don't quite understand the intricacies of that, so hopefully today I can kind of walk you through some of those things, and we can kind of look at the best way for you to strategize your own transfer. But before we get into that, it might be worthwhile to talk about where do people go. So on the screen you can see some examples of some of the more common places that students will transfer to from Inver Hills. A lot of our local partners, the State University system, the U of M system, University of Wisconsin-River Falls is not that far from Inver Hills, and so that's a pretty common place that students will go. However, students transfer across the United States, and so we have students who go to colleges in California and Arizona and Alaska, whatever, and those credits are still going to go with them, and the reason for that is because of our accreditation status. So we hold a similar accreditation to what places like the University of Minnesota and some of the others that you're seeing on this list have, and so that really makes our credits much more transferable. However, locally, we have agreements with many of these colleges, and you'll be able to view equivalency tables and things like that, and so that's what we'll kind of look at in some of these future slides. And it's worthwhile to talk about how a bachelor's degree is made up and kind of work your way backwards, if you will. So you kind of say, well, my goal is to earn a bachelor's degree. What can I do at Inver Hills that will lead me down that road? Okay? And so your bachelor's degree consists of all of these different factors. You have things like your general education, you have things like your pre-major, which are things that unfortunately a lot of times students on this end forget about or kind of neglect or don't quite understand. And so we're going to kind of focus a little bit on that. You also have foreign language in some circumstances. Not every college requires it. The University of Minnesota, for example, most of their programs don't, but if you're in the College of Liberal Arts, you may need a foreign language. And so we'd have to look at the individual school and kind of see what they want. Then you also have your major requirements, which typically are done at the university, along with maybe a minor if you want to kind of have a secondary kind of focus, and then also electives. And so your credits from us are going to transfer into one of these categories. And so most likely they're going to fall in line with the general education things. And then what we'll also be able to do is kind of align, do you need things to prep for your program, and how would we do that? And then if some of the courses that you took don't fall in line with either of those, then they typically will fall into an elective category. So we really don't want to get a lot of things in the elective category, but it's okay if you have a few things, not a big deal. So let's say you take a PE class, not a problem. But really it comes down to what are you trying to get out of in the transfer process. So many students come here with the goal of earning a full degree and getting halfway to that bachelor's degree. So maybe they want to earn roughly 60 credits, earn an associate degree, and be ready for transfer, save a fair amount of money in the process by having lower tuition rates, by having smaller class sizes, or whatever the reason is that you might want to attend a community college. Maybe you're still living at home, and it kind of provides you the need to not be able to have to live on campus and pay for those costs and everything associated with that. Other students, their goal is to walk in the door, take as few credits as possible, and then get out and go off to that university. And so what we have to do is then look at that university and say, okay, well, your goal is to go to the University of Minnesota. Well, how could we help facilitate that the most effective way, and then get you there as quickly as possible? So we look at their particular requirements. In the process of all this, there's some key considerations that you want to take in trying to build your own transfer plan. So first of all, what major do you want? Many students walk in the door here and they're undecided, and that's okay. But we do want you to start thinking about that relatively quickly so that we can kind of work towards helping you with the best course selection for that particular major. Okay? And then we also want to look at what colleges you're considering. And so maybe you don't know, or maybe you kind of have an idea, okay, I'd like to go to the U of M system, whether it be Twin Cities or Morris or Duluth or wherever. Or maybe you'd like to attend one of the state universities. So, Inver Hills is part of the NINSCU system, and that's the two-year college wing. But then there's also the four-year colleges. So you have places like Winona State and Minnesota State Mankato and St. Cloud and Bemidji and so on. And those might be some of the schools that you're looking at. And then you also have the private college consortium of places like St. Thomas and Hamlin and Bethel and so on and so forth. And so all of those classes, or not classes, I'm sorry, but all of those colleges are able to be searched pretty readily if you use this website called GPS Life Plan. And so what GPS Life Plan is it's a site that's put together to help you look at, the GPS stands for goals, planning, and success. And so there's an Inver Hills version of that site put together out there for you. So if you kind of go to the site, there's five, kind of key headings here, but we're just going to use education for a minute. And in the education setting, you'll be able to see some kind of key components about if you want to decide what you want to study or researching some areas of study, and then selecting the school to further your education. And I'm going to go into the selecting the school briefly, and you'll be able to kind of see some of the different options here about, preparing for, not preparing for college, but what are the types of schools in Minnesota, and if you want to kind of, look at that, it might bring you to the iSeek site, and you can kind of review that. I'll get one off top right here. And in the steps to choosing a school, it kind of brings you to another place that gives you good information about that. There's another area that I looked at earlier, and all of a sudden I'm drawing a blank on where it is here. But under planning your education, right here, the very top one, Minnesota State Colleges and Universities, and you'll get a link to the MinSCU system. And if you want to, search for programs and things at all of the state universities, you can do that. If you're, back here and you want to look at online programs or the University of Minnesota and so on and so forth. So it's a good kind of search mechanism for you to be able to kind of do that. So I really recommend you to take some time to play around with the GPS Life Plan if, in fact, you're not exactly sure about where you want to go, and give you some good insight into being able to do that. Of course, some other things that go along with your college decision are going to be things like cost and how much it is. If we kind of compare to Inver, just to kind of give you a sort of a benchmark here, if you attend Inver Hills and you're taking roughly 30 credits a year, so that's kind of the benchmark that they base tuition costs off of, you're spending about $5,000 a year. You go to the Minnesota State University system, you're spending roughly $7,000 a year. That's not room and board, this is simply tuition. The University of Minnesota is somewhere in the range of $13,000 a year, and then the private college consortium ranges, roughly from $20,000 to $35,000 a year. So depending on the school that you're going to kind of go to, that might be part of it. But don't let the cost frighten you right away, either from some of the private colleges. Many of them do have great scholarship opportunities and things that would bring that cost down to you, and they may be able to make it in line with some of those other state universities or the U of M system. So sometimes people see the sticker shock and they just kind of run away from them. And that may not be the case for you. So don't kind of give up on that as an opportunity. Then, of course, you're going to want to decide, do you want a residential experience? Are you willing to commute? Do you still want to do that, like you've already probably been doing at Inver Hills? And then do your courses transfer individually, or do they transfer as a package? And so we're going to talk about the AA in just a minute, but many colleges are very good about transferring your general education as part of a sort of a package deal. And then they will look at your pre-major things, which we talked about earlier, on a one-by-one basis. So if you want to be an engineering major, for example, and you need a math course, there's several math courses you need. They'll look to say, is our calculus the same as their calculus? Is our college physics the same as their college physics, and so on and so forth. So we'll look at equivalency tables to be able to do that. So that's kind of a key component about figuring out where you're going to go. Once you kind of have some ideas, you might want to start doing some research. And some of that research, there's two key areas that you're going to review and look at on the main college websites. You're going to look at their admission page, and they always will break down their admission pages into two areas. You're going to look at the transfer admission or freshman admission, and so you're going to obviously focus on the transfer admission criteria. If you are a PSEO student and you're graduating and you're looking to go off to the university the subsequent fall, then you're going to look at the freshman admission criteria, okay? So there's certain dates and deadlines and application things that you need to do. Your credits can still go with you potentially, but just from an admission status, you're going to be considered a freshman admit, and so you may have different deadlines and things like that. So of course you're going to look at the college websites. Many of these colleges will come here, they'll visit with you. During Student Success Day every spring, we have a transfer fair where like 30 different colleges are going to be here, and so it's a great opportunity for you to touch base personally with them. But you can also look at the student bulletin. You come over to the Counseling and Advising Center, and we have a bulletin board that kind of highlights the dates and who's coming to campus and so on and so forth. So make sure you take advantage of that. And of course, make a visit to campus. Go to that school, see if it's the right fit. I've talked to so many students over the years that say, I'm going to go to XYZ school. They never visit, and then they get there, and then they come back, and they're like, I hated it there. Well, it wasn't what I expected. And so you want to make sure that you take the time, go visit, and make sure it's the right place. Of course, you can always meet with counselors or advisors here at Inver Hills, and we'll help you along with this process. And then another great site that I think is worth looking at is through the Counseling and Advising site. And so if you go to that, just inverhills.edu/counseling, there's several sort of subsections of the site. And one of those subsections is this, there's a considering transfer, and kind of walks you through some of the things we're talking about right now. But the one I'm going to focus on right now is the Transfer Resources page. And on the Transfer Resources page, you'll begin to see, hey, there's specific information here about the U of M Twin Cities and some of the specific programs and guides and so on. If you want to link directly to some of the state universities, you want to look at the majors at St. Cloud, we'll link you right to that, and many of the private colleges, and here's St. Thomas, if you want to get a transfer guide, you can click on it and so on. But I'm going to bring you to an example, and we're going to look at, let's say you're interested in being a kinesiology major at the University of Minnesota. And we have a transfer guide from them where they will kind of show you from their website all of the different local community colleges and how your credits would align with the major requirements, or the pre-major requirements, I should say. So we're going to zip down to, here's the kinesiology major right here. And what they're saying here is that if you take a certain biology at Inver Hills, certain chemistry, and certain physics, you need to have those done before your application is submitted. And then in the second line items here, under things like the public speaking and the psychology and the math, those would be preferred for you to have done in advance, and then they're showing you that those are equivalent classes that can be done here. So those are part of the pre-major requirements. They can also be wrapped into your general education. So with careful planning, you can make them pre-major and general ed all at the same time. Once in a while, a student will be very, kind of focused on, Rob, I want to come to Inver and I want to get my generals done, which is fine, but then they kind of lose sight of the pre-major. And so then they'll say, I got my generals done, now I want to be a kinesiology major. But then they didn't take the right math. They didn't take the physics, they didn't take the chemistry, and so on and so forth. So early on, careful planning will help you to kind of get there, and there's great resources out there. So this is just one example that you could kind of look up on your own through the Counseling and Advising page. So let's talk about that AA degree, which is what many students come into Inver Hills pursuing. I would say roughly 50 to 60% of students who walk in the door say, I'm getting an AA degree, or in the student vernacular, I'm getting my generals done. And that's exactly what the AA is. What it's designed to do is to get you to the halfway point of the bachelor's degree. So it's 120 credits, like I said earlier, to earn your bachelor's degree on average. And your associate in arts is 60. And it's broken down into three key components. You've got your general ed, which is 40 credits. That's what's known as the Minnesota Transfer Curriculum. You have 2 credits of health and wellness and 18 credits of electives. The electives could be things that are additional general ed, they could be pre-major things, and so on and so forth. So it kind of gives you some of that electability and kind of fluctuation in how you would individualize your program to yourself. So if your goal is to get your generals done and to get out of here, an AA is a great plan to be able to do that. But again, looking backwards almost to say, what is your goal, where are you wanting to go, then we can kind of help you to say, is that indeed the best plan for you to kind of work that out. So A great advantage of the AA is that as a package, it will satisfy your general education for any Minnesota-funded college. So that would be the U of M system, that would be any of the state colleges and universities, Mankato, St. Cloud, and so on, all right? Many of the private colleges said, this is a great deal, we'll also accept it. And so you've got places like Concordia College in St. Paul, you have St. Scholastica, St. Kate's, and so on, that will accept the AA as also satisfying their general education. Some other colleges, St. Thomas is a great example. We have a ton of students who transfer to St. Thomas, but they don't want you to earn an AA as a blanket. They're okay with you to earn an AA, but it won't automatically satisfy their general eds. Instead, we'd want to work off of their transfer guide and say, okay, these are the histories you need to choose from, these are the English lits you need to choose from, and so on and so forth, okay? So it's kind of helpful to kind of understand what that college wants and how to kind of work that in, all right? And many students who walk in the door, they're undecided. The AA is a great sort of default plan to do that. We just don't want you to default to it for 2 years without thinking forward and thinking what your major might be and where you want to go. So right now is a great time to be planning and thinking about that and moving forward, okay? And then if you actually want to review what the requirements are for the AA degree, I've kind of put a link on here and you'd be able to see that off of the college's main website, all right? A couple of kind of key admission deadlines coming up. So if you're looking to transfer, say, in a fall semester, and this is a general rule of thumb, every college is slightly different, but I tend to use the University of Minnesota as sort of the example here because they seem to have the more hard and fast deadlines. But if you want to transfer somewhere for the subsequent fall, you want to get your application in roughly by February or March 1st. And then if you want to transfer in the spring semester, which is a January term, then you want to get that application in hopefully by October of each year, okay? And then I did kind of mention that other thing earlier about if you are a PSCO student, these deadlines may be a little bit different because you're going to apply as a freshman if that is right after you graduate. However, if you stick around Inver beyond your high school graduation and take more credits for a semester or two, then you automatically become a transfer student and that defaults you into that system. So I'm going to leave you with a few websites. We talked about many of these already. So the inverhills.edu/counseling, the transfer resources page, you can kind of find those transfer guides. The GPS Life Plan gives you a lot of great information about planning your education and looking at things like that. MinnesotaTransfer.org is just a very broad, generic site about transferring across the state and how to do that more effectively. And then lastly, the one that I didn't get into, and I'll get into that in a second to give you a good example, is uSelect. And so it's difficult sometimes to describe to people to say type u.select.org, and so the easy way to do it, and I just remember it as transfer.org, but either way works for you. So if you go to the transfer.org website, what we can do is view equivalents from classes at Inver to how they would equate at another college or university. And you can build a profile, you can kind of go into major kind of depth on this, but for now we're just going to do a quick equivalency. And if you want to see, for example, how something would transfer, we're going to pick, let's pick Metro State University. It's a pretty common place that students go from Inver Hills. And you want to, so we got to pick Metro State University. And then you're going to come from another Minnesota school, which happens to be Inver Hills. That comes up, we'll pick Inver. And let's say you know for sure you need a math course, and you need college algebra, and you want to make sure that that college algebra class that's taught here would meet the college algebra pre-major requirement for, say, a business major or something. So we can kind of scroll down and see that our math, 1118 over here, is considered the same as their math, 1115. So then you can be confident that the course that you took here is considered directly equivalent to that. And so anytime you're wondering about equivalencies, the U of M uses this system very well, so many students kind of go into this, and so most of the colleges are now using this uSelect program. So again, you can use the letter u.select.org, but I just remember it easier by using that transfer.org. So make great use of that. That one's a wonderful site. The other thing that you want to start doing is, especially if in your first couple of semesters, start the planning now. We'll help you build an overall plan. to graduate from us and to kind of move on, or if your goal is to leave earlier, we can kind of sit down with you and do that as well. And then we have a couple of great classes that you might also want to consider along the way. So for first year students, if you're in your first or second semester, we have a class called First Year Experience on course to your college success. And that's a blend of kind of career planning, and it also has some great strategies for being an effective college student. And then the other class is a one-credit class, which is just about career planning. And so if you're undecided, you're trying to figure out your majors and so on and so forth, then either of these might be some great choices to think about. And they can easily fall in line with your eighth grade. And then lastly, Inver Hills has some partnerships on campus with some local colleges at the four-year level. And so as a two-year community college, we can't award you a bachelor's degree, but what we can do is bring the bachelor's degree to you. And so many of these, all the colleges listed here rent classroom space from us. They bring their instructors here, and they would then be able to have the degree here. So the most recent thing that we've just added is the elementary education degree through Concordia University, and that's just happening right now this current semester. So we're constantly adding new options for you to be able to do that and to earn your bachelor's degree right here on campus without leaving, if that's something that you want to do. But of course, transferring, we're here to help you with that. Please ask us along the way. It's not always an easy process, but it's a process that somebody can help you with, and there's some great resources out there. And again, make sure you visit with the schools, make sure you touch base with them, and get to the campuses, talk to the reps when they come here, and kind of go from there. And you'll have a great opportunity to transfer, and you'll be well positioned to do so. So thanks again.